I'm guessing you guys can hear me. Yeah? Okay. People still coming in a little bit. That's okay. Thank you, everyone, for showing up right after lunch. I know you guys are probably nursing your food comas. There's going to be a little bit of audience participation in this. I hope I can get you guys to scream a little bit or maybe raise your hands. But we're here, and we're going to be talking about threat intelligence and whether it's actionable in the year 2022. That, of course, implies that it wasn't actionable before 2022. That's not what I'm trying to imply. But as we go through the presentation, I'm going to show everyone how it evolved from what it was and what people considered threat intelligence circa 2012, let's say, to what it's considered today, right? And that's kind of the premise of the talk. Now, full disclosure, there's some academic, boring stuff at the beginning. So apologies for that, but there are some concepts that we just have to go through a little equation, nothing too crazy. But first, the obligatory who am I slide. Hi, my name is Peter. I've been in this industry for 16 years. On a W-2 in the 90s, I was getting in trouble on the internet with knocks on the door and this type of stuff. But I've worked everything from the hedge fund space, building high-frequency trading systems that are secure. I've been doing pen testing. I've been doing red teaming, also application security, et cetera, et cetera. And now I run the engineering team at Flashpoint, which is a threat intelligence vendor. So that's also a disclosure that I work for a threat intelligence vendor, right? I think that's very important to tell everybody because there's an inherent bias with threat intelligence in general, and coming from a vendor perspective is very different than threat intelligence at a small company when you're trying to protect your video game, your bank, whatever. So I think that's also important. Another thing I'd like to mention is like this talk was really inspired by Mark Arnold's talk from this very conference in 2018 on hacking intelligence. Also a great intelligence chat if you haven't checked it out. Mark, thank you, and I know you're sitting right there. Thanks very much. And also I'd like to say that I'm coming from a very privileged stance in an organization that has great makers organizations. Our intelligence teams, our product teams are fantastic, and I have to give a shout out to my engineering team, over 76 brilliant engineers trying to solve some really, really hard problems when it comes to threat intelligence. The scale that we're dealing at is petabytes of data, terabytes of data a second. It's so hard to do. And how do you funnel that stuff up into something that's usable, actionable by your business? So, like I said, we're gonna get a little academic in the beginning, so apologies. So here's the obligatory definition of threat intelligence. This is one of the few slides I'm gonna read directly off of. Again, apologies, but I'm just gonna read the Gartner definition. And if you guys wanna play a game, there's some hexadecimal on the bottom, figure that out. But threat intelligence is an evidence-based knowledge, including context, mechanisms, indicators, implications, and action-oriented, action being a key word there, advice about how an existing and emerging menace or hazard to your assets. Sorry, I slurred there a little bit. This intelligence can be used to inform decisions regarding the subject's response to a menace and/or hazard. Right? This is how Gartner defines it today. Gartner just released a paper about how to action threat intelligence. I suggest you read that. It's pretty good. One of the things that we think about when we think about threat intelligence, again, full disclosure, this is like the one vendor thing, I promise. I'm not trying to sell you anything. But I think it's really important that you guys know that intelligence, not just threat intelligence, intelligence, and we're going to talk about ontology of what that means later. Intelligence allows you to take rapid, informed actions to mitigate risk, or remediate risk, or compensate risk. This is really important. Intelligence is everywhere you need it to be, around the clock, whenever you need it to be. And it's coming from sources all over the public internet, also the deep and dark web. If you want to get into the technical definitions of that, what that means, we can. But this stuff comes from everywhere. And not one company, well, maybe Google can, but not one company in a reasonable sense can collect the entire internet and really surface these things in a quick and informed way. So that's what we try to do as threat intelligence practitioners, not just Flashpoint, everybody. We have to get this intelligence to the people that need it in order to mitigate, take action, etc. So, obligatory concept number one, the diagram. Has anyone seen this intelligence cycle diagram before? Show of hands? Really? Okay, all right, so go on Wikipedia. The intelligence cycle is what is used by most intelligence agencies on the planet. That includes our friends in the federal government, it's the CIA, the FBI, but that also includes the Chinese intelligence, it also includes the FSB, so on and so forth. This concept of of intelligence in general is a cycle, it's a wheel and it's informative. Most intelligence organizations write up finished intelligence reports to inform policy decisions. That's what happens, right? But what I want everyone here to take away from is that in this process, you have to plan and direct your intelligence organization. For example, somebody who issues SIM cards has a different threat intelligence profile than somebody who releases a video game. Those threat intelligence programs are not the same, and we have to accommodate for that. Also, collection is super important. And I want to distinguish this. Collection is probably one of the most important pieces of intelligence, but collecting data is not intelligence. Data turns into intelligence after processing an analysis. So after processing an analysis, we then get something produced to you that is then disseminated to your organizations, to the key stakeholders that can inform policy decisions or inform firewall policy. It can be soft decisions, human decisions. It could also be technical decisions. So that is the obligatory concept number one. When we talk about threat intelligence, it's coming from this world. It's coming from a world based in human intelligence. If anyone knows how a CIA case officer works, you just got out of training out of the CIA, you're now a spy, you get probably sent to some agency overseas, you're stationed at an office, and you go out and you meet one of your contacts who works at a factory, and you say, I'll give you $500, and you tell me what the output of your factory is gonna be for the next couple of weeks, right? That's human intelligence, right? It's I see you feds shifting in your seats, I see you, right? That's human intelligence. And that stuff is super important. But that takes on a different context in the digital world, and I'm gonna talk about that. Obligatory concept number two, one equation, and we're done, I promise. So in this one equation, if you ever read an Infosec textbook, Infosec is what we used to call it in the 90s before it was cybersecurity, you're gonna find this equation of how to identify risk. I know that there are two equations on the screen, let's go with the bottom one. It's basically threat times vulnerability equals risk. You add in your impact. Impact is a measured source of how a potential breach to your asset can impact your entire organization. And you also have to add in the likelihood. And likelihood is calculated in many different ways, but you have to factor in the technical controls that you have in place for something that's on your network. So for example, if you have your crown jewels on an air-gapped computer that never touches the internet on your network, A, I don't know how you did that, but great. but B, that's probably not going to be subjected to a DDoS attack, right? So these are the basic steps in identifying risk in an organization. And threat intelligence, as I said before, helps mitigate, compensate, or remediate risk. So let's play a game. We're going to design an InfoSec program. Is Justin here, Justin Varner? No? Okay. But we're going to define an InfoSec program. And at the very high level, what we're seeing on the slide is the basics of an InfoSec program at a small and medium business, right? Hypothetically, let's just say our business is around 200 people, and we invest in firewalls, the best ones, UTMs. You got your IDS, IPS built right in, Wildfire, Sandbox, whatever, right? Like you have your best firewalls. Then you have your endpoint and AVs, or your Symantec's, McAfee's, SentinelOne, whatever. And your vulnerability scanner. There's a lot of breach laws out there that require vulnerability scanners, so now you have your vulnerability scanners. Would you guys say this is like the start of a good InfoSec program? Bruce Schneider, InfoSec is a process, not a product, right? But let's say we have the processes in place. It's a good start, right? It's very basic, but it's a good start. But let's say we have budget. Our 200-person company has a budget, and we can add in a little bit more things onto there. Asset management from Tanium, who sponsored something here, endpoint EDR, DLP, your mail gateways, your application security firewall that's really good for mitigating threats, to your web application, but secure coding, I think, is probably better. So you're also paying up for the premium versions of your repository, so you can do static analysis, dynamic analysis, make sure your licenses are in compliance with what your policies are, so on and so forth. Now our Infosec program looks a little bit better, right? A little bit better, right? We have a little bit more tools, we have a little bit more coverage, more visibility on the inside of our network. We have a little bit more budget, so why don't we throw in a SIM? You guys, anyone here ever configure a SIM? How's that been like the 6 months of your life, right? Like that's tough stuff, right? So, and then we're gonna get some threat intelligence feeds circa 2012. You guys remember? Here's my number, call me maybe. That was the summer jam back then, right? Our threat intelligence feeds are from 2012, and that's important because when we were thinking about threat intelligence back then, it was IP addresses, domains, YARA rules. That's what we were thinking about. And so that's what we got. And also personnel, so including yourself in this 200-person company, you got +1 staff member, right? So now this is our Infosec program. You have all these tools, you have some process, +1 staff member. Oh, by the way, you guys are also doing IT, changing printers and all this other stuff. Sound familiar? Anybody? Right? I'm the Infosec guy, I'm also the printer changer guy, yeah. It happens. So we're in good shape. But there are some things we still can't buy, right? For example, we can't buy any sidecar products for our Kubernetes clusters, our microservices, all this other stuff. We don't have the professional service hours to configure our SIM, so we'll figure that out later on, or any of the other cool new toys that everyone's selling us nowadays. But looking at this Infosec program for SMB, small, medium business, looks okay, right? If your processes are okay, you can probably pass a SOC 2 audit, maybe even a FedRAMP audit, depending on what you're doing. But before we get there, let's talk about what our business is, all right? So now we've designed this Infosec program for our business, and let's do something simple that probably has a low threat profile. Let's issue credit cards. That's what we do. We're issuing credit cards in our 200-person company. And yeah, if somebody needs a credit card, if Apple's coming out with a new credit card, they come to us and they're like, we need a new credit card. We're like, we got you. We'll do the new Apple credit card. Let's do it. So on and so forth. Okay, and this is where the audience participation part comes in. So I'm going to say what you guys are going to see on screen is what we would consider threat intelligence. And I'm going to ask you guys to say aye or nay about whether this piece of threat intelligence is actionable within the constructs of our company that we just defined. So really quickly, let's start with an easy one. Who knows what's on screen? It's a YARA rule, right? It goes into your UTM. I know we're all tired. I know we just ate. So the ayes or nays, just so you know, there's no like right or wrong answer. I think it's more of like an audience thing. If you guys hear more people say aye for something or some people say nay, that tells you about their own environments rather than our environment. But based on what we talked about in setting up our Infosec program, is this actionable? Ayes? Ayes, come on, no one? One person. Is this actionable? No? Okay. Nays? No, I got a little hums over there, some nays. All right, fine. We're all eating. It's a YARA rule. This can be consumed by our IDS and IPS, right? It's for Conti ransomware. It's based behavioral. You can put this into your devices and it can stop this stuff on your network. It's fairly actionable. How about this one? Next one. Is this actionable? Yes. Seeing some nods. Okay. Nays? No nays. Good. Yes, this is generally actionable. Can you guys read what's up there? It's Stuxnet. We deliver credit cards. How many programmable logic controllers do you think exist in our office? Anyone have a Siemens PLC in their office? It's actionable, absolutely. Is it relevant to us? I don't know. Depends where your office is. How about this? Anyone know what pastebin is? Somebody posting something on pastebin, they just post hi. Is this actionable? This one's easy. Nays, right? Like, it's not really actionable. There's really zero context here. There's not much we can do with this piece of information. All right, how about this one? We get an email from CISA. Your Oracle Java 7 Security Manager bypass vulnerability. Is this actionable? Aye, thank you. Yes, this is absolutely actionable. But unlike the YARA rules that we had before, which were automatically consumed by our devices. This is an email that comes into our probably security inbox, and we got to make sure that us or our staff sees this email and then takes action appropriately throughout the organization. And since we run both IT and Infosec, and there's no concept of SREs or DevOps or something like that in our business, it's on the hook here to make sure that our Java libraries are up to date and not vulnerable to this vulnerability. Not vulnerable to vulnerability. All right, anyway. But all right, how about this? Next one, relatively easy. Is this actionable? We can probably identify that it's an IP address, right? It's, does anyone know that subnet? Some people do. How about now? This is one of the net blocks used by APT in that very famous Mandiant report, APT1. Is this actionable now? It's getting closer, right? We can absolutely put this in our firewall, right? This was published on October 25th, 2004. In our company, where we're issuing credit cards, right, is this actionable? Do we have business in China? Do we need to have access to China? So on and so forth. It gets a little harder, right? Like, this can very easily be blocked in a firewall. It can very easily be actionable, but do we want to action it? Some decision making has to take place here. How about this one? What are we looking at here? DNS, right? Have you guys ever subscribed to a feed that you automatically feed into a firewall and that feed gets popped and now you're blocking all DNS queries out of your organization? Has that ever happened? It could happen. Your threat intelligence vendors can get popped, right? Like, yes, it's absolutely actionable, and you might not even see it get into your systems, but it can definitely ruin your day. It can definitely ruin your day, right? And this is part of the problem with threat intelligence, at least as it was in circa 2012. All right, let's fast forward. All right, we're in 2022. We're at RVAsec. The world has changed. Right, we got some threat intelligence vendors. There's a lot of them out there. Topping the charts right now is Kate Bush. Does anyone know why? Yes, yeah, Stranger Things, good stuff. Kate Bush is on top again, good job. Right, we finally got our SIM configured. It's working now. It's awesome. It's been 10 years. We finally got it done. We got some PIV protocol chips that we're using MFA on our laptops. So we MFA everywhere, and we have low code automation. We can automate things that come in, and it's like a SOAR, right? And now, since our business was so good in selling credit cards, we thought, hey, let's sell SIM cards. They're both cards, right? How hard could it be? Right? So now we're a business selling credit cards and SIM cards. But the threat intelligence landscape has changed a little bit, right? Like in 2012, we're talking about feeds, we're talking about emails, right? Like one of the questions I get asked a lot is like, oh, Flashpoint, you guys are a threat intelligence feed. Yeah, sure, we have that. It's like that's par for the course. Everyone has the YARA rules coming in. Everyone has the domains coming in. Everyone has the IP addresses coming in. But I want to show you guys what it looks like a little bit differently. We're going to start with an easy one again. It's another YARA rule, right? The same as last time, 2012 to 2022. We need this stuff. It gets into our systems. What's interesting, and there's a whole nother talk here, is like the statistics of all the YARA rules that you put into your firewalls, how many of them actually stopped a breach on your system. There's a whole talk there. But this is actionable. This can go straight into your device. It can definitely do the thing that it needs to do. And I'm not sure if you guys can read. Can you read it? What kind of malware it is? TrickBot? Are you guys familiar with TrickBot? It's a big one these days, right? So how about this? What if I told you I know a lot about TrickBot? Is this actionable? Here's an information page. I can tell you a little blurb about TrickBot, how many IOCs I have for TrickBots, when it was first seen, when it was last seen. I can tell you the attack tags in very granular detail that you can put into your MISP instance or any other type of tip and filter it down. And I can also tell you that among communities on the internet, it's being discussed pretty actively these days. Is that actionable? Maybe. In our 200-person company, right? Like we have us and one other IT person. This might be, if that person has a high turnover and it's a new security analyst and they look at this, it's like, it's good to know. But what if this report has the IOCs attached to it and it's a consumable via API? Now it's really actionable. Now you're not only getting one YARA rule, you're getting a whole bunch. You're getting a whole bunch of events with a lot of context. I'm telling you about trick bots that hit healthcare places. I'm telling you about trick bots that hit financial services places. I'm also telling you about trick bots that hit aerospace places. And these types of behaviors are very different, even though it's the same piece of malware. The context here matters. It's not just an IP address anymore. The YARA rules are a great start, but it's only after you're looking at them in the aggregate that you can start to make informed decisions about how you really want to consume this type of stuff. What if you need more context, right? In this example, we're a 200-person org with 2 IT people, a security person. We may not have the budget or the team to consume more context, but we can give it to you. What if you have a reverse engineering team, right? You can look at the PE headers. We can give you context that's freely available on the internet, OSINT, regular stuff. We all know about this. And we can add that to the report, and you can consume that via an API. It's not just a feed anymore. The context matters, right? And we're moving on now. How about non-YARA rule examples, right? It gets a little boring with the YARA rules, the same thing, everything. How about this? What's going on here? We're issuing credit cards here, right? So that's good. I can show you the amount of card not present fraud versus card present fraud. Any MSAs in the room? PCI MSAs? No? Okay. Those are the guys that audit you for PCI compliance. But anyway, card present versus card not present fraud. Card not present fraud, in general, in the industry, is the higher one. That means people aren't physically spoofing cards as much anymore. They're using them in online transactions. Right? And these vendors are getting breached, and these card numbers are being sold all over the web for very cheap. And I can tell you that our cards in the last 7 days account for over $222,000 in potential fraud loss if our card's minimum value is a $500 line of credit. So for this example, for this presentation, I pulled a subset of the bigger number. This number's in the billions when you talk about the major card providers out there, right? And we can tell, and you can customize what kind of bins you want to track in your system, what kind of bins you don't want to track in your system. Apple may come to you and say, I need a bunch of new credit cards. All right, here are your bin numbers. Let's track Apple's bin numbers across the web. Are they getting breached more than other bin numbers? So on and so forth. The context here matters. But this is not consumable, but any of the devices that are in our system. What just happened? How is this different than a YARA rule? Is it intelligence, right? If you're coming from a world where intelligence is an IP address, this might not be useful to you, but our 200-person company is not the same as major credit card provider out there. What we're looking at here, and the difference here, is we're looking outside the perimeter for a potential impact that our IT team cannot control. But if you have a fraud team, now this becomes actionable. If you can invest in a fraud team and you can say, wait, how much of my cards are breached? Where are they breached? Where are they being sold? Well, I can tell you that. I can tell you exactly how much of your cards are added per breach. On the top there, one breach had 267 cards in it. The average price of all your cards across all the marketplaces where they're being sold is $9.97, right? And the total cards added across the breaches in the last 7 days is over 5,188 cards, only across 13 bin numbers, right? So if you have a fraud team, this is very actionable. But what do you need? What do you need in order to take action on this at a fraud team? You might need the full card numbers, right? You might need the full card numbers, and that's something that modern threat intelligence vendors have as well. We can get that card canceled before a threat actor can sell it to a willing buyer. That's threat intelligence. It's not an IP address. Everyone has IP address. That's threat intelligence. Your card, as a consumer, you're safe because these fraud departments, that's what they do 24/7. That's not a hyperbole. They're there 365, 24/7. It's like a SOC. It's like a NOC. That's always staffed. This stuff is happening all the time. What about card present fraud? Moving on. Card present fraud is when people are making fake copies of your credit cards. And then they're going places, and then they're using those credit cards. Now, That's a little bit harder to stop, but I have all this breach data about your cards. What if I can tell you, I can localize where these cards are being breached, where these skimmers are, where is the highest volume of skimmers for your particular cards? I can tell you that. I can tell you the exact zip codes where your cards got breached, or where, right? So now you can work with your liaisons in law enforcement to get these skimmers offline. And everyone know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about a credit card skimmer? Like you pull it off of your normal, like you put it into an ATM, but there's a place on it that reads your card. Like we have a lot of information in this space around where this stuff is localized. That's intelligence. It's not just an IP address. It's not just a feed. It's far more than that. All right, getting back to more traditional stuff. This is what's called a finished intelligence report. In the physical world, in the law enforcement world, this would be on a piece of paper, and it would go to somebody who's an informed policy or decision maker, right? In our world, in the digital world, it might go to a CISO, a director, or something like that. Based on this report, just in and of itself, just on the title and the stock photo picture, is this actionable? It's a report, right? A physical report. It can be actionable. It's a trick question. How could you possibly answer the question without knowing what's in the report, right? So the report does have more data in it, right? And the report tells you these are the trending vulnerabilities that are happening as of May 2022 and deep in dark web communities where people are trying to find exploits, and some of them have confirmed remote code execution problems with them. And over here we have the number of mentions, whether it has remote code, the actual name of the CVE, so on and so forth. Now this is a little bit more actionable, right? We all have a vulnerability scanner. We can check if we're exposure. Well, you know what I find interesting about this? This is real data, right? So this is as of May 2022. Look at that bottom one, CVE 2017-1188-2. Why are people today talking about a CVE from 2017? That's interesting, right? That requires a little bit more investigation, right? That's something that you can definitely look into, and you can click in and see what's happening. These type of reports exist in modern threat intelligence vendors. It's par for the course, another thing, and all of them are available via API. And there's also free and open source versions of these things, right? Vulnerability researchers are really giving this back to the community just like we are, right? There's a lot of ways that, because at the end of the day, we want to protect people, we want to protect consumers. Next, again, is this threat intelligence, first of all, before it's actionable? I'm giving you a lot of data here. March 20th, May 6th, right? This is a conversation happening on a closed forum. Somebody asks, originally in Russian, does anyone know how to launch your payload with this exploit? Startup not visible in XML base 64. Any reverse engineers in the room? You know exactly what's going on here. You're looking for an entry point, right? Right? You know exactly what's going on here. And then, a couple months later, who could make it workable? DM me, I'm ready to buy through escrow, right? These are real conversations happening, dude. Like, people are buying this stuff in order to have remote code executable vulnerabilities that they're putting into ransomware, that they're putting into their different type of attack campaigns. And there's money behind this. People are buying this, right? There's a financial transaction taking place. There are escrow vendors for this type of stuff. If you start talking about escrow vendors, the community here is so big that you need escrow vendors, right? Just the existence of escrow for buying exploits is a huge, huge deal. All right, little bit of vocabulary. Does anyone know what any means? Not related to anatomy. Has anyone heard this term before, the slang term here? Any? No? Hands? It means insider. We have our own lexicons. When you're following these communities have their own lexicons that they use, and when somebody says I'm an any, that means I'm an insider, right? So in our hypothetical business here, we are now selling credit cards, and we're now selling SIM cards. Has anyone heard of SIM swapping? That's a big one, right? That's a huge one. Well, what if I told you that people every day, look at the dates. Look at the dates of when I pulled this data. June 16th, 2022. That's when I added the screenshot into the Prezzo. I waited specifically. I could have done it this morning. But what people are saying here, and I'm not sure if you can read this on your screen, AnyUp. AnyUp means I'm an insider and I'm up for business. That's literally what it means. And I can tell you that this guy, middle of the page, AnyUp, PM me if you need a SIM swap, only number and new SIM required. That guy doesn't know what he's doing. That guy's new. I can tell you because all you need to say is AnyUp. And if you've been doing this long enough, that's the code. AnyUp is the code. I'm ready to go. You DM this person, and they'll do a SIM swap for you. Is this actionable? Depending who you are, right? Let's say you're a 200-person company that now sells SIM cards. I don't know. What if you're a major telco provider, and you have locations all over the world? Maybe that is a little bit more actionable now. And you can see what time this was posted. These people usually post this stuff when they're starting their shift. They're charging $50 a swap, right? So you can get really narrow with pattern of life. You can see what their handles are. You can see when it's posted. These blackouts in the middle of the screen here, replace that blackout with your cell phone provider. That's what they're saying, right? It's a big deal. It's happening every single day, and it's creating a big, big business. So these were all examples of our fake business of selling credit cards and SIM cards, right? How about this one? No political statements here, just looking at a picture. First of all, first question, is it intelligence? It's a picture. It can be. What's the context, right? I'm going to put my intel hat on a little bit. I see a Ukrainian vehicle, 2 soldiers with a Russian flag, some propaganda decals that were obviously photoshopped on there, right? Like you can tell a story without much context here. This was pulled from an OSINT source. If you put this picture in image search, you'll find it. Also on the Intel hat here, if you know what Kraken 13 is, Kraken War 13, it's a special ops unit out of Russia. And they're showing off that, hey, we're doing a good job here. But is it Intel? It's a picture. Is it Intel? Right? And these type of propaganda posts happen all the time. Hundreds of thousands of images, right? What kind of context can you grab from this, right? If you were here for the previous talk about anomalies, there's a lot of talk about AI ML models, right? These are critical to modern threat intelligence. How about now? What if I can tell you exactly what the image is showing, right? What if I can read, first of all, going back here, does anyone see the word Kraken here? It's there in the middle, right? You can barely see it, but over here it's barely readable, but our AI ML model picked it up. We can also search for cars, camouflage, so on and so forth. Again, at a scaled level, this is a massive problem, right? We have thousands of images coming in per second. An analyst can't look at all those images all at once and get a day's work done on anything. You need help. You need AI, you need ML, you need a good team, and you need a team that knows what they're doing to find out false positives. You also need a team that doesn't have an inherent bias, right? These are hard problems to solve. They're incredibly hard problems to solve. But this in and of itself, I wouldn't call it intelligence, but when you derive stuff from this picture might have EXIF data with location data, for example. Location data, is it actionable for us? Even in our little example here, we're a SIM card company. It's not even relevant to us. Right? Unless we're selling SIM cards into Ukraine, unless we're selling credit cards in Ukraine, and even then, it might be relevant to us, but isn't actionable. No, this is actionable for a whole different type of client. How about mentions? If you're on these forums, if you're in these public communities, people talk about stuff that's happening in real time. The war that's happening currently in Eastern Europe has a lot of chatter going about it. You type in TikTok in Ukraine, and the war's being fought on TikTok. People are showing off and doing all this other stuff, and they're mentioning a whole bunch of stuff. But there are a lot of public sources that are unobstructed, meaning you don't need a username and password to get into it, to glean conversation data, propaganda data, so on and so forth. So how do you turn that into intelligence? Well, using AI ML, you can. You absolutely can. The size of the circle here means the number of mentions. That big red circle, that's the Donetsk region of Ukraine. A lot of fighting is happening in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. A lot of people are mentioning it. But what the mouse is hovering on, and apologies for the pronunciation, I can't pronounce that. Jasnuvara, the locale of Jasnuvara. Has anyone heard of Jasnuvara before? I haven't. I have no idea what Jasnuvara is, but 817 people are talking about it, right? So if you're an all-source intel analyst and you're looking for key pieces of intelligence, why are 817 people talking about Jasnuvara within the last 24 hours? Is something happening there, right? Is this actionable? Maybe not for my credit card, SIM card company, but there are people where this is actionable. If there's an artillery strike happening, we can get people out of there, right? Like that's real stuff. That's real intelligence. How do we tie this all back to our SIM cards, our credit cards, our firewalls? I don't think people understand the toll that geopolitical conflict takes on the digital world. The digital world, usually it ebbs and flows with the geopolitical situation that's happening. Because of the conflict that's happening in Eastern Europe, we're seeing attacks from both sides. We're seeing IOCs coming out of the regions from both sides. We're seeing different types of actor groups claiming responsibility for different types of attacks. Again, this is actionable. This is going directly into our firewalls. If we are selling credit cards in the Ukraine and we see a spike in these particular IOCs that are coming out of Ukraine, we can tie that particular attack to what's going on in the geopolitical world. Whenever there's a massive geopolitical conflict, this happens. Whether you see it or not, this was happening before there were boots on the ground in the Ukraine. We were seeing this type of activity happening before these people were going in, right? That's intelligence, threat intelligence. How about, well, let's move it back a bit, because physical conflict, it's super sad and all this other stuff. How about a problem we all kind of understand? Identity management, right? Anyone here have an account that they have to log into with a password and MFA token? Show of hands, everyone? That's what I thought. Okay, so this is a problem, right? And in our theoretical company, we're enforcing strong usernames and passwords. We have MFA on our boxes and on our apps, and we have everything that we can have in place. What about that bottom line? We'll get to that in a second, right? So in our theoretical company, we're pretty good on the internal management of credentials, right? Not that bad. But one of the problems that we always have is shadow IT. Somebody with a corporate credit card wants to use this new calendar app that looks really cool, and it takes all their contacts out of Google and Outlook and puts this in the new calendar, and now they can do their meetings. And they used the password 123456. All right? That happens. The shadow IT stuff happens. How do we even begin to solve that problem? It's a hard one. Also, does anyone know how I can take over your account even if you have the top 3 things in place? What if I stole your cookie with all your device information on it? It's possible. You can have all this stuff in place. If I have your cookie, I can get your access to your account, even if you have all this stuff in place. What if I can tell you that your company's cookies are out in the wild and are being stolen by malware? That's threat intelligence. Not only resetting usernames and passwords when they've been breached because of shadow IT, but revoking cookies in real time before malware authors can utilize your boxes to farm Bitcoin or whatever. But going back to the shadow IT problem, can everyone see that top password? This is real data from 2022. Right? So in the previous slide, look at number 1. We enforce strong usernames and passwords. We absolutely do in our business. You got to use a password manager, the whole thing. Some online vendor for 99 cents a month where you can link your calendars does not. You can put a password that says 123456 that doesn't have OAuth, doesn't have Facebook sign-in, that doesn't have any SAML or SSO on it, and you can have all the crown jewels of your PII and personal information on this vendor. What's blacked out here on the bottom right is a list of vendors that are not our company. And these are it's example.com, but just replace your domain in there, because we have that data, I promise you. You put your domain in there, and you'll see the top 100 passwords that your users are using not within your environment. That's a real problem. Is this actionable? Is this intelligence? Remember, collection, analysis, production. This is intelligence. One username and password does not intelligence make. An aggregate across what's happening the entire web, now you can start having a conversation. So let's dig into this problem a little bit more. So over here I have some pullouts from the previous slide where people have their passwords. What I want to call your attention to is this meets organizational profile. So when 2 slides ago when I said we enforce strong passwords, that's your organizational profile. I can tell you whether the passwords that we find at your vendors meet your organizational profile. Why is that important? I think somebody said it. Same password. Somebody's reusing their password at a vendor. They're reusing their own corporate password at another vendor. I feel that that's pretty actionable, right? Like that's a good one. Happens all the time. It happens every single day. So let's go to indirect matches, because indirect matches is a little bit of a harder problem to solve, right? With indirect matches, you're not finding your passwords. You're not finding things that call out your little company by name. This is a problem that when you're starting out in the threat intelligence space and you're a small, medium business, like it's really hard to start that threat intelligence practice because you might log into some vendor, you might put in your company name, and nothing pops up, right? And they're like, damn, I can't even do research on my own company. We're too small. Is this even useful to me, right? But I bet you're using Salesforce, right? So here's a ransomware dashboard, right? And we can tell you where the top 10 targeted industries by different ransomware authors. Remember when we were talking about a couple slides ago, Ukraine, certain types of IOCs come out of certain types of geopolitical conflicts. Ransomware actors like going around certain industries because there are certain standards in certain industries that everyone knows. Rest in peace, Internet Explorer. It's been a good 27 years. Thank you very much for my career and everybody else's career in this room. But there's that Swift terminal at that bank with the Bloomberg terminal on it that's running IE7. I guarantee you, right? And there are a lot of targeted industries, meat packing from aerospace to retail, that use kind of the same software across all these types of industries. What this is telling me as a small vendor where I can't find my own name here, I can tell you your supply chain is borked, right? I can tell you not only if your supply chain is hit, something like this has the power, and this is a very real example. We can tell our vendors that they've been breached before they know that they have been breached, because ransomware actors put this stuff up for public consumption. They like to brag, right? They zip these files and say, I breached this company, right? And that happens. Even if you're not finding your name in a threat intelligence vendor, I guarantee you that threat intelligence vendor has the password of your supply chain. I guarantee you that threat intelligence vendor has information about ransomware that is breaching your supply chain. Supply chain is very important in the last few years. How many people have to wait for a car for the next 3 years these days, right? Formula shortage, toilet paper shortage, so on and so forth, right? These are things that we're all dealing with that have some sort of digital impact, right? Going back to Stuxnet, it's not like PLCs aren't being attacked anymore on major ships. That's still happening, right? So your supply chain is super important. How about vulnerability intelligence? That's another one. What if I told you there are 3 vulnerabilities in your supply chain that don't have CVEs? I guarantee you that I can tell you that there are vulnerabilities in your supply chain that don't have CVEs. And I can also tell you that one of them has a remote code execution. There's a difference between data and intelligence. This is intelligence. This is vulnerability intelligence. If any of you guys talk to Jake Koons in the last 10 years, he'll tell you all about this, right? This is very real stuff. This is not only for your vendor supply chains. You can discover in your own stack where these vulnerabilities are. And is this even actionable? If you're waiting on Microsoft to patch something that has an RCE, is this even actionable for you guys? Can it be? Yeah, maybe you can take that system off the internet, unless it's a money-making system, then you have to migrate it. How long do you have to wait for a patch? There are compensating and remediating controls that you can take, but this is actionable depending on your budget, right? Like maybe for our small 200-person company, this might be a little hard, but for bigger organizations, it has to be actionable. So that is what threat intelligence looks like in 2022. It came from a world of understanding int. Again, call out to Mark Arnold's talk from 2018 on hacking intelligence. Has anyone seen these terms before? Humint, geoint, finint, osint, sigint. These are common terms used in the physical industry, in law enforcement agencies and in federal agencies. Human intelligence. Remember I gave the example of the case officer going to the factory worker. That's human intelligence. How about this? Is this human intelligence? Me having a conversation with a threat actor on a forum? Right? It's not human in the same way as me paying some factory worker for some data, but with enough context here, you can glean a lot here. How about that Donetsk region stuff? Is that geo intelligence? When these guys are talking about geo intelligence, they're moving satellites. My SIM card company, my credit card company can't move a satellite. It's a little bit out of our budget. But I can tell you what mentions are happening where we're selling credit cards. That might be geoint. How about MassInt? Mass is measurement intelligence, and this is an oversimplification, but I can measure how much loss you have in your credit cards in the last 7 days. It's a real oversimplification, but it's kind of analogous. OSINT is something we all use, super important. How about this picture? Is it even intelligence, right? Is that cyber intelligence? Is it fin intelligence, right? Again, with the right analyst hat, with the right context, and a mass of these things, it can be the right intelligence. But what I want to propose here is that these int concepts don't translate very well to the digital world. We have to start thinking of the digital world in a little bit of a different way. And I have to give a shout out to Jake Koons and Matt Howell, people I work with, and we've been thinking about how we have to change the ontologies of the stuff that we're talking about, right? It's all intelligence. But these are broken down into way different ontologies. Threat intelligence is not the same as open source intelligence. OSINT, it's still here, it's a good one, is its own thing. But deep and dark web intelligence is not the same as regular threat intelligence. If you have to get through a password or to an onion site, that's a way different collection profile than if you just go to a news site and scrape it. Very different. Vulnerability intelligence. I can tell you have a vulnerability before NVD can. That's intelligence. Identity intelligence, we just did password. Attack surface management, that could be physical, that could be digital. Financial intelligence, I can tell you how much fraud loss you have in your credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. We have to start thinking about intelligence as concepts and ontologies in a different way. This physical stuff, it's useful. There's a lot of overlap. We have customers and clients and people that we help using these types of concepts, but in our digital world, we have to start thinking about it a little bit different because there's always going to be overlap. There's always going to be a human element. I want to call out that last one, so your security community intelligence. The best type of intelligence you can get is, hi, I'm a bank. I got hit with this piece of ransomware that's a trick bot that's like Tiny Banker, and I'm going to give you the YARA rules and signatures to every other bank in my mailing list. That's one of the best kind of intelligence. Sharing intelligence is probably the best way that our digital communal immune system works, right? We can't keep this stuff to ourselves. We have to share this stuff. So it's not, is threat intelligence actionable in 2022? That's kind of a joke. The real question is intelligence actionable? I think all intelligence is actionable. Data may not be actionable. Intelligence is actionable. And that's time. Thank you very much, everybody. So I think we have a couple minutes for questions. Easy, right? No questions? All right, that's what I thought. All right, thank you, everybody. I'll be around if you guys want to talk to me. Thanks again. Cheers.